This is the third presentation looking at Zambia as our case study of an LIDC country that is seeking to develop. In the first presentation, we looked at Zambia's current level of development using development indicators like life expectancy. In the second presentation, we looked at the global connections that Zambia has, for example, with China as a foreign country, with ABF as a transnational corporation. We also looked at links with charities like WaterAid. In this final presentation, we're going to look at what development strategy is most appropriate for a country to develop. Is it top-down or is it bottom-up development that's best? So starting with our top-down example, in Zambia, the big top-down project was the Kariba Dam. This was built in the 1950s and completed in 1957. It not only created a huge lake, Lake Kariba, but it provides a lot of hydroelectric power. You can pause the slide if you want to read about what top-down development means. Some of the positives of the Kariba Dam project were that it generates lots of hydroelectric power. This electricity was vital for powering Zambia's copper industry, and it still is today. The hydroelectric power provides electricity to the city of Lusaka, and it's helped that city to develop. It's a renewable source of energy, so it's not contributing greenhouse gases. The money from hydroelectric power can be used by the government to further develop Zambia, because Zambia sells some of its hydroelectric power to neighbouring countries. The Lake Kariba created behind the dam has become a tourist and fishing area, bringing in different income streams. It also prevents the Zambezi River from flooding downstream. On the negative side, when Lake Kariba was created behind the dam, it forced 57,000 people from their homes, and these people were forced to move to new lands which were less fertile, and these people really suffered from hunger. By building the dam, yes, it controls flooding, but that prevents that natural flooding which puts silt onto the land, and so by stopping this, it's reduced soil fertility and made it harder for people downstream of the dam to grow their crops. Many communities are just too poor to buy the electricity, so they're not benefiting from the project. Perhaps the biggest problem with this is that the dam is now really old and in need of urgent repairs. You can see from this slide just how serious the problem of what's going to happen to this dam in the future is. When the dam was built, the water level, the water depth of the plunge pool was 10 metres. The force of water causing hydraulic action has created a plunge pool that's 90 metres deep today. And what's happened is the dam itself is having its own foundations eroded. And the potential of this dam collapsing is a real serious issue. If it failed, 3.5 million people would be at risk from the huge flood that would be created. Not to mention the fact that Zambia would lose its main source of electricity, the hydroelectric power from this dam. To stop this happening, it's going to cost enormous amounts of money. It's estimated that the repairs in the next few years will cost £150 million. The alternative to a top-down strategy is a bottom-up strategy. The example we looked at in Zambia was called Room to Read. Room to Read is a charity, and it works to improve literacy and gender equality across countries in Africa and Asia. By focusing on literacy, Room to Read's idea is that once people can read, they can then learn at a much faster rate. And once they can learn and get that good education, the whole country can start to develop much faster. Now, traditionally in Zambia, many more girls drop out of school to take on responsibility for household jobs like cooking. Sometimes the girls are pushed into early marriages, and that further causes them to drop out of school early. And so, as a result of this, Room to Read have particularly focused on improving literacy amongst girls and encouraging girls to complete their secondary school education. You'll remember this links back to one of the main Millennium Development Goals for Zambia, which was to achieve universal primary education. The positives of this project are that by teaching a child to read, they can then learn much faster. And if they can then get a better education, that will lead to a better job and therefore the opportunity of a better future. Room to Read's trained lots of new teachers, and so the quality of education in schools will keep on improving, and those teachers can then train the next generation of teachers. Room to Read works with the local communities, and so the people feel part of the project. It's not being dictated to them like a top-down project would be. Education empowers people, and so it's empowered particularly those girls that might not have had an education in the past to now be able to take on opportunities and get well-paid jobs. On the negative side, bottom-up aid. It's only going to happen in certain villages. It's not going to benefit all. Because it relies on charity funding, once that funding has been used up, there isn't enough funding to keep spreading the benefit around further. It relies on volunteer workers, such as teachers from foreign countries, to come and train those new teachers. So again, it's heavily reliant on outside aid.